Yes, guys, welcome to Chasing Green Arrows. We are back for another day as we count down to the game week 1 deadline in FPL. And I'm joined by regular co-host Bigman Bakar, but also special friend and guest of the show. He's the Premier League's man in Manchester. Ian Irving, how you doing, mate?
Special friends. I like that, Jenny. Get straight into it. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Looking forward to it. I mean, I've got a few dilemmas. I'm going to see my team in a little while, and I need help. So who better than you two?
I don't know about that. A big man did finish 4th in the world once before, and I won't tell you about my highest finish in comparison. So, big man, I'm glad you're on hand to help guide us through. How you doing, mate?
Hello, Jani. Hello, Ian. Hello, and welcome to all the listeners viewers. Yeah, firstly, it's amazing to have Ian on the show. It's an absolute pleasure to actually be speaking to him live. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that are up in the air. I mean, my squad was looking in a very healthy place 24 hours ago. Since then, Bobb has got injured. João Pedro may or may not be an option because Brighton are in the market for another forward. Similarly, Stupinan is back on the grass, which isn't great for my 4 million enabler. And Eze is being rumored with a move away. So a lot of things are changing by the hour, and I feel that my team is getting ripped apart as we speak.
Other than that, though, you're in good shape, yeah?
Yeah.
And we've only had, 2 manager press conferences. We had Fulham yesterday, Brighton this morning. There's a few happening at the moment, 5 or 6 today, and then the majority tomorrow. So who knows what we're going to get in the next 24 hours? As always, last-minute decisions will go down to the deadline. But from those 4 talking points you mentioned, big man, let's just address them one by one. And then in about 20 minutes' time, guys, stay tuned because we're going to show Ian's team and we're going to be answering your questions. Do get your questions in the chat. We read all the comments, likes and subscribers. Always welcome as well. Shall we start with, the Bobb news is the big headline, isn't it? So Oscar Bobb replacement, but then also maybe the knock-on effect at Man City, and we want Ian's view there on Eze. So first and foremost, if we're selling Bobb, and all 3 of us owned Bobb this time yesterday, do we replace him with a 5 million mid, like for like? Do you go down to Harry Winks and boost your squad elsewhere with an extra 0.5 million upgrade? Or do you shop in the 5.5 band and try and save $500,000 elsewhere so you can buy a Smith Rowe? Ian, what was your reaction to it and what direction did you go in?
Yeah, I had a very long day of work yesterday because I was at Manchester City all day.
Wow,
obviously I saw the news on my way home. The first rumours sort of coming through that Bobb was injured. So when I got home last night, before I could send my team across to discuss today, I just had a look and I just did, I think, the obvious move, which was just to swap him for Morgan Rogers for the time being. But the more I look at my team, the more I think I'm leaving myself a little bit exposed. We'll see it later on. I think if you're relying on Morgan Rogers to start every single week and your bench isn't strong, then I'm not totally sure. I mean, his preseason form's been brilliant. I'm sure you've got the stats to back that up, Gianni, as well. But I just think that there is so much uncertainty at this time of the season, probably more so than any other time, because teams have lined up in pre-season. Players have looked good. I mean, Ahmad is another potential option at Manchester United who's had a fantastic pre-season. But I'm not totally confident he's starting the game against Fulham tomorrow now after the way Garnacho came off the bench. And obviously there's still Jadon Sancho. There's still Anthony around as well. So, it wouldn't be the first time that someone's looked fantastic in pre-season and we've got to game week 1 and gone, hang on a minute, why is he not starting? And if your bench isn't strong enough, you're just leaving yourself exposed a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, Morgan Rogers has been amazing pre-season. He's had more minutes than any other Aston Villa player. I think it's, we'll show some data, but I think I put a tweet out last night. We've got a screen grab of. It's something like 3 goals, 2 assists, 399 minutes. But also last season, his numbers were really good. He had 8 starts for Aston Villa at the end of last season. So this is pre-season form. Like, it's good, but it's pre-season. And we always have to caveat that with it's pre-season. We can see the Aston Villa fixtures and on the next slide where we get a sea of green from game week 3. If you go by the fixture tickers from game week 3, the Aston Villa fixtures are as good as any, to the point where I've looked at my draft and gone, should I not be saving money for Ollie Watkins game week 3? Now, can Rodgers cover Watkins? Probably not. Is Rodgers going to be starting from game week 3 on and on? I mean, in theory, yes, because he ended the season so well for Aston Villa. But they've signed, big man, a lot of attacking midfielders. Like, you've been hotter on Rodgers than most. He was in most of your drafts pre-season before the Bobb injury. You've clearly looked into it. Do you feel like he's still a very safe bet? Because he had a great run of starts at the end of last season, but there were injuries. But now they've signed a lot of attacking mids.
I was actually torn between Rogers and Bobb as it is. So the decision is easy for me. As in, if you want a like for like replacement, I think Rogers is there for the taking. If anything, I think his minutes over a longer period of time, for let's say the first 5-6 game weeks, were more secure than Bobb. I have no doubts regarding his potential, especially for his price. Villa could sign a Diaby replacement, and there's a chance that once sort of Ramsey gets back to full fitness and once the Champions League begins, Rodgers can gradually be phased out, but he'll definitely start the 4 or 5 fixtures. And if he does well, his price will skyrocket. So I'm a big fan of Rodgers. Having said that, um, I don't think it's as clear cut and as black and white as who is the best Oscar Bob replacement, because now that we see that, for example, Barco isn't realistically a pick because of Stupiñán's emergence, a lot of FPL managers sort of find themselves in the position where they're looking to probably upgrade their bench. So what you can do is you can probably downgrade Bob to a 4.5 and use that money on the bench if Bob was your 8th attacker. So that's another alternative.
Yeah.
Are we worried about Stupiñán? I'm not worried about Stupiñán. I don't know why. I think because Barco's been so good pre-season and because he can play left centre back. I think Barco's played his way in, but I mean, time will tell. The fact he's on corners as well, he's given responsibility in the team. I think we worry about Barco when he gets dropped, but until that point, I still think he's head and shoulders the best 4 million asset. And yeah, I guess we should err on the side of caution. But if we're looking at early wildcards anyway, then Stupiñán's going to take a long time to be up and running in the first team with starts. It might be looking at game week 4 or 5. By then, we're wildcarding anyway.
Yeah, I think this one actually is probably. I said before, there's a great deal of uncertainty at this sort of time of year. I mean, with teams who've changed manager during the summer as well, there's even more uncertainty. So I think with him, because he is so cheap, there is the opportunity to be able to go with him and see how that plays out. Because I'm presuming he's not going to be someone who you are relying upon to start every single week. Just Brighton's style. I'm just not sure how many clean sheets he's getting anyway, to be honest. Attacking wise, it maybe feels different, but some of the formations that I saw written about from Brighton's pre-season involve 6 forwards. So
it's mental.
If that's the case, I'm not worried about João Pedro starting with Ruta coming in, but I am worried about how many goals they're going to concede, and obviously then by how many returns that the defenders get. But I think if you're relying on him to start, if he's one of your first 3 first-choice defenders, it's something to give more consideration to. If he's your 4th or, certainly if he's your 5th defender, I don't think you need to worry about it too much. It's almost a bonus, really, if he ends up keeping his place in the team beyond the first month of the season. And if you are thinking of an early wildcard, then I think you need to worry about it even less. And like you say, being on corners, the way he's performed in pre-season, attacking-wise at least, he does look like he could be a brilliant option at 4 million. So probably worth a gamble in that sense.
Yeah, worth noting, Brighton also had a bid refused, but I think they've gone back with a higher offer for the Turkish left-back. So they are in for a left-back with or without Stupiñán and Barco. But this guy is a proper versatile player. He's played all over the park. He played a lot of minutes at right-back. He's actually right-footed, but he's mainly a left-back. I think he might be Brighton's answer to their right-back. I say issue, but they've had a few players play there, Veltman, Milner. Solly March has done some time there, so I think he'll probably end up playing right back. But they are linked with a guy that is in theory a left back. Also worth noting. Let's talk about the Bobb.
Johnny, I'd like to add. I'd like to add on Stupiñán.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a lot of people are looking to wildcard early. So, for example, in my team, I'm not looking to wildcard that early. Definitely not in the 3 or 4 weeks. And even if you look at Barco, a lot of people have spent so much on their attack that they're realistically looking at Barco as a starter in game week 4 and 5 when Brighton play Ipswich and Nottingham Forest at home. Now, game week 4 is right after an international break, which is approximately a month from now on in. A month is surely enough for Stupiñán to get back to full fitness. So by the time we actually need that player, he may not even be playing. That's the issue.
International break. Yeah. No, fair point. Cam, thank you so much for the super chat. He said loved your appearance on the pod last
bless
season.
You, mate. Thank you, Cameron.
You must have done almost half a season, did you, on the pod?
Yeah, I did. Well, I don't know how much it was really. Yeah, but a good chunk anyway. I loved it. Normally, I'm the one asking the questions, so usually it's when I come on here and do the stream with you, Gianni, that I get to sort of give a few opinions and be on the opposite side of the coin, being pressed into why I've done things as opposed to just having a bit of fun at poking people. And I really enjoyed it. Jules on the pod had an absolutely ridiculous season. I don't know how, but he did. And Sam at one point was struggling to get above me, so I had a lot of fun with that. So yeah, it was great. And Cameron, thank you for listening, and appreciate the feedback. And hopefully I'll be on with you this year, Gianni, definitely. But hopefully I'll get on the pod a couple of times as well, and hopefully Jules isn't doing as well, so it'd be a bit more fun.
Yeah, I saw he had like a 10k. I think Kelly had about 70k. So both of them had really good seasons. Yeah. Guys, thank you for all your comments. As always, we are reading them, and do hit those buttons, likes and subscribes. Bobb being injured, Alvarez going, De Bruyne aging and picking up more injuries. City are going to buy, aren't they, Ian? They're going to buy someone. And Eze is obviously linked, but there must be a load of names that Pep likes. I mean, Olmo was one linked earlier in the window. He's Barca. Can you see them going in for someone? Do you think Eze is the favourite for that spot?
Yeah, just the issue is that it's money that's come from the sale of Julian Alvarez, who I know hasn't always been used as an out-and-out number 9 for City. But certainly if Erling Haaland needs a rest or is missing for whatever reason, then at the moment, it's sort of Phil Foden, false 9 maybe, which we've seen a little bit in the past. There's not really an automatic player to come in and replace Haaland in the way that Alvarez has done in the past. So there's a lot of money in City's back pocket after that sale. I mean, it's eye-watering, 80-odd million quid for your backup striker is just an incredible piece of business. So it does give them wriggle room. Obviously, in the world now of PSR, FFP in Europe, there's huge consideration given to that. But that type of transfer frees up a lot of money. So City, at the moment, there's only Savinho who's come into the first team. He's a winger. So Oscar Bobb's injury, was he a bonus? Was he getting a load of minutes in pre-season because Phil Foden wasn't quite back? Obviously, we won't find out now because it sounds like he's got the injury and he's going to be missing for a little while. So I still don't think it changed Pep's plans too much, but Eze is someone who's been linked with Manchester City before. There was very strong interest in him, certainly last summer when they ended up getting... Was it last summer before? Anyway, when they signed Mateus Nunes, there's Paquetá on the agenda at that point as well. And Eze, I think, was ahead of those two players. It didn't work out for whatever reason. So it wouldn't surprise me too much if he was one of the players that was on their list, but that doesn't really solve the problem that he's got if Haaland is unavailable. I mean, Haaland suffers a serious injury. What happens then?
Yeah, really good point. Without that backup, Alvarez was so important to them at key times last season. And yeah, I do wonder about some of that City recruitment. Mateus Nunes came in the last year and a half. Kovacic has come in. And in that time, in that 2-year period, Rodri's partner for Spain, Fabian Ruiz, left Napoli to PSG for like an all right sum of money. But I'm like, I watched that Spanish midfield and went, why didn't Pep sign Fabian Ruiz? But yeah, that's another discussion. Big man, what's your take on Eze now as an FPL asset? Because we've been hot on him all pre-season. Does it slightly put you off? Because a move to Man City on paper looks good. But actually, when you think about it, eased into the team, lack of minutes at first, distraction in the meantime. Does it put us off Eze completely? Is he in your current team?
He is in my current team, but I won't say that this news hasn't put me off. I mean, it's concerning, and it's basically meant that I've been keeping tabs on the news every hour, right? Because I don't really want to be in a situation where he ends up missing any of the opening fixtures. I definitely think he's a much better asset at Palace, where he's at least nailed and secure for minutes, and he's the talisman, expected to be the talisman in the absence of Elise. So it's concerning for sure. Is it enough to put me off? Probably not. But judging by how team news has been filtering in, I won't be surprised if we hear the news 1 hour before the deadline tomorrow that City are in advanced talks with Eze, and I'm made to basically rip up my draft.
I'm worried about Palace, picking Palace players at least anyway. I mean, I've got Dean Henderson in my team at the moment as my goalkeeper pick, but there's uncertainty over Eze. There was already a little bit of uncertainty with the way they would look without Elise, because Elise and Eze together was the magic key for our FPL selections last year. When they started together, their form and their numbers were far, far higher than when they were on their own without the
Jordan Ayew.
Well, yeah, and he even been speculation about Jordan Ayew, hasn't there?
Yeah.
So, and then there's obviously, well, I've seen the reports about the bids for Mark Gahey, seen the interest from Fulham in Anderson, Joachim Anderson as well. So quite a bit of uncertainty there with Palace. That's my concern, really. And this incredible formula that they struck towards the end of last season with Glasgow, which has made us all interested in their players. Fair enough, they might pick up where they left off. But if there is all this speculation, remembering that the first, 3 game weeks are going to be before the transfer window, then it's just putting me off ever so slightly. Ezra, I thought, would be an automatic pick for me for this season with the way last season finished. But with the changes that there has been so far and with that little bit uncertainty at the minute, I haven't got him.
I do wonder if Mateta being back is a big boost because he's actually a couple of weeks ahead of everyone else. He still had a pre-season. He just came back early and then obviously had the Olympics. So a pre-season that really mattered, but scored goals for fun for France. He is back training with Palace and he could start game week 1.
Yeah, but will he do what he did last year? Because there's not a long history.
His record's been insane.
Absolutely, but there's not a long history of him doing that. So if he was coming back year after year and showing those sort of numbers and that sort of performance, fair enough. Absolutely. Let's be very, very positive about him being back. And he might turn out to be exactly the same player as last year. His Olympic performances for France, he got a lot of praise for those. So perhaps he has turned a corner in his career and he's going to be the sort of player who can show up week after week and show the sort of numbers that he was showing last year. But I don't think it's a certain thing. I don't think it's you're not looking at him in the way that you look at, the very, very well-established centre forwards in the league. I think there is still a little bit of uncertainty there as well. And again, when he comes back in, having been at the Olympics, does that mean he hits the ground running straight away? Does that mean that he has to ease off a little bit at times and be managed a little bit? I don't know yet. It's another part of this tricky uncertainty that there is with squads heading into the season that we have every year. But this year, it looks like everywhere you look, there's something. So, it's just tempering my sort of excitement about Palace a little bit, all these issues.
Yeah, I do hear that. And
I sort of hear where Ian is coming from. I sort of hear where Ian is coming from because he's right about the small sample. There were like 12 games, and most of the fixtures I remember that Palace had at the time were relatively easy as well. So it may be true. I expect them to be all right, but they may not be as good as they were at that point, is basically the point I think Ian is trying to make. And I think I agree with him.
We've all gone Henderson as our 4.5 keeper as well, which is interesting. If they lose Gay here,
not myself.
Anderson, have you not? No, you've gone Flecken, haven't you? Yeah, you're big on Flecken.
I've gone Flecken, yeah.
I still think Sells.
I'm not big on Flecken. I just think the
no one's big on
you. Backtrack then as quick as you could, yeah.
No one's big on any of the 4.5s, really. It's more just settling.
Exactly.
And it's a bit of I spoke to Ali, my favourite manager in world football, fellow chaser, watches this show. He came 215th and then first in FPL 3 seasons ago and 2 seasons ago. And he's gone with Sells, and he said, don't overthink it. Pick your 4.5 and hope, because none of them are like, you can put a case forward for any of them, but none of them come with a guarantee.
I like Sells. I really like Sells. I like Williams as well in Forest's defence. He's not in my pick at the moment. He's not in my selection at the moment, but I think he is an interesting pick. Before he picked up his injury last year, he was playing really, really well for Forest. Forest numbers defensively are great. I'm sure people will be aware of that because it's been very well publicised how good their numbers were. It was a set piece performance that let them down in the end. But I mean, Nuno's history in the Premier League suggests that he can organise a defence as well. So perhaps with a full pre-season, a couple of new additions here and there, they're a defence that I'm definitely interested in. And I would say that it's between sort of Henderson and Sells for me for my 4.5 goalkeeper.
Who also rotate really well. If you rotate them, you get 9. If you get 9 out of the first 10 games, you'd have good home fixtures if you rotate them. But again, it's finding the extra 0.5 and then just the worry of have I picked the right guy each week. Ian, we wouldn't be a FPL show with you to not touch on United assets. I don't want to spend too long on United because I feel like United are a bit of a non-event this year. You might tell me otherwise. Just FPL from game week 1. There is one guy.
We've not even on 20 minutes yet, lad. Come on.
There's one guy we've got to talk about. I know our producers are both United fans as well, so we'll be keen for us to touch on this. But we've got to go to Bruno because he is a legit option. And I think Bruno's a better option than Odegaard, for example, 8.5. And then, of course, Garnacho maybe is an option. And Ahmad, you could say, might be one. Who do you think will start as the 2 wide forwards? Because there's 3 good names there in Rashford, Diallo and Garnacho. And
there's
only
a lot
2
more
will
than
start.
3.
Well, 3 that I guess could start game week 1 in maybe. But yeah. And then Bruno is brilliant. Is he going to play false 9 again, or will he play in the 10?
I think against Fulham, it will be similar to the Community Shield, just because I don't think Joshua Zirkzee has got enough minutes to be able in pre-season. Well, bearing in mind for United, he's not had any minutes in pre-season, but besides behind closed doors games. So I don't think he's in line to start. I mean, picking the two wide players is really tricky. At the first draft I made, Marcus Rashford was in it. Because for me, at 7 million, he's someone who can hit the heights that he hit a couple of years ago. And he's like followed a pattern in recent times where he has one brilliant season, one not so good, and then, so he's due another good one.
FPL price him either really high or really low.
Yeah, and when he's lowly priced, he's good, and when he's highly priced, he's not as good. But he's got more challenge for his position now than I think he's ever had. It sounds like Ten Hag is set on starting him on the left wing, so we're not going to see him at centre forward, maybe at all, but certainly not as much as we have done in the last couple of years. I think it's more likely that you'll see a Bruno Fernandes or a Mason Mount type rotation in the false nine position than seeing Rashford up front, which means he starts on the left, and I think he will start on the left against Fulham. My instinct, because of the way Garnacho played in the Community Shield and the impact that he had and his fitness levels, which are fantastic. I mean, he started 30-odd games straight last year in what was pretty much his proper bona fide breakout season. He'd done all right the year before, but last year, he became essential to United. So I could see it being Garnacho and Rashford, but it wouldn't surprise me if Ahmad played as well on that right-hand side and Garnacho was on the bench again. And in the past, Rashford has been a brilliant asset for us from that left-hand side, but it always tended to be when he had Luke Shaw behind him. And Luke Shaw's injury just tempers my excitement, excitement's probably the wrong word, but interest in selecting Marcus Rashford for the start of this season. Just because without that established relationship that we know works, last year, certainly Rashford was unable to get to the levels that we expected from him. So I think Bruno is the best pick. I think he's potentially a little bit cheap considering, he's on penalties. He's Manchester United's talisman. I love it when players sign new contracts because for whatever reason in FPL, they seem to become better assets right after that. At the moment, he's in my draft. And I don't think United can be as bad as they were last season. I say bad, it's the worst ever Premier League finish. And for us, defensively, you're not picking Manchester United defenders consistently because the record wasn't great. They've not broken the 60 goal mark, I think I'm right in saying, in the Premier League under Ten Hag either. But Højlund's had another year. He'll be back after the international break. Zirkzee is now a new option. And in the wide areas, I mean, they've got options coming out their ears, haven't they? We've talked there about Ahmad, Garnacho and Rashford, but you've also got Jadon Sancho, who was a 70-odd million pound footballer not very long ago. Anthony, who was even more expensive footballer who still hasn't quite sort of shown what anyone would want, really, in a Manchester United shirt. He's been way off what the expected level was. There's Bruno, there's Mason Mount, who has a bit of history as well. So there are attacking options there. They're not very expensive, but again, there's that uncertainty that it's still Ten Hag as the manager. So will the attack function better? Everyone's praising Ruud van Nistelrooy, aren't they, and saying that him coming in will make a big difference. Hopefully it will, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
The Zirkzee signing as well could be massive for Bruno, and it could be massive for the wide men because the way he links play, like he's not a goal scorer. If you watched him in any YouTube clips from his time at Bologna, he will drop deep, get on the ball, but he'll orchestrate play, and he'll be so good for midfield runners, and he'll be so good for wide men.
Well, the runners is the key point, Gianni, because the way that they played in the Community Shield, there was far more rotation in the midfield positions in terms of one of the number sixes joining Bruno into the attack and Mason Mount into the attack as well. And the rotation and movement around them, Ahmad was very good at he did this in pre-season as well, filling in on the inside as well and allowing the fullback to come out to the right-hand side. So if Bruno has got all that going on around him, you'd think that would make him a better FPL asset because his creative numbers are almost second to none, aren't they, during his time in the Premier League? I think there's only probably Kevin De Bruyne who's even challenging the numbers, if even as good as Bruno in recent times. So if there are people around him, if there are people to finish the chances, I think he could be a great asset, and I think he could be a little bit cheap at 8.5.
Big man.
I'd just like to add at this point, I'm smiling here because, other picks like Eze, potentially Eze, right? Joao Pedro, Barco as mentioned earlier. I mean, all these guys, they're falling like 9 pins at the moment. Bruno is the least of my worries at the moment, right? He's 8.5 million. He's going to play. He's not a headache, at least every week. I mean, he removes so much uncertainty that I have regarding my team that I just like him as an option. And I've mentioned on previous streams that with 5 free transfers at our disposal, players like Bruno become more valuable because you can then save your transfers very easily. I'm just going to keep Bruno. I hope he does well. And it's not as if I'm looking to wildcard immediately as well. So over the long period of time, I think he's going to tick along with the points consistently. 8.5 is a fine price to pay, I think.
I thought he came in low. When I saw 8.5, I was like, oh, is everyone going to be a bit low this year? Because he was one of the teasers. And other players weren't coming in low. And I was thinking, Bruno for 8.5. I genuinely think he's one of the top 2-3 players. I look at my team and go, that's who I'm missing. I'm missing an Arsenal attacker. I'm missing Bruno. The other two I really want. And probably an Arsenal defender. I don't have an Arsenal player. So yeah, Ewan, good question on Eze. There's nothing concrete yet. It's just been talked about for a long time, this one.
No, and from what I was told at the time, there was concrete interest in him. Like I say, I think it was last summer, wasn't it, when Matheus Nunes moved from Wolves to City? So I think that there has been interest in him previously that I know is definitely true. But I don't have any information right now that Manchester City are working on a deal for him or anything like that. But I do think with the money that they've got, I mean, you never know with Pep, do you? Because he can just use midfielders up front like he did the year before Haaland came in, and look at the way City performed that year. But to me it feels like they do need cover for him. So perhaps that would be more of a priority for him right now.
Guys, we're keen to know if you're going to own a Man United asset or not. So we'll just do a simple poll. Are you going to own a Man United player? Yes or no? And we'll see the response.
Johnny, you won't own a Manchester United player all season, will you?
I once went, do you know what?
You can't backtrack from this, surely.
Being a content creator, people look at your old ranks and stuff, and Bigman will know this. And I had some seasons, like going back to my uni days, where genuinely, I remember a season where I wouldn't pick a Man United player because I was so anti-United. And it's like, you can't take my overall rank seriously when I'm playing games like that, because I used to play FPL quite casually. And people will still dig up those ranks and go, call himself an expert. Look what he got in 2008.
So you had bad ranks because you didn't pick Manchester United players and you haven't learned your lesson there then, mate.
I mean, they were good back then. All that time way back. Guys, thank you so much for joining us in the chat. FPL Guna, my mate from Miami, is watching. Good to see you in the chat, mate. How come there isn't any Ivan Toney talk? I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess the transfer chat has dipped. Brentford have good fixtures. Does he walk straight into the 11? I mean, Brentford want to sell him. He's got a year left on his contract. They want to get rid, but it doesn't look like there's a buyer in.
Johnny, I think, sorry, Ian, I just wanted to add. I just think it's simply because Solanke is at the same price. And anyone who has that structure is just going to go to Solanke, because Solanke is like the new shiny toy in town.
Yeah, and Havertz is only 0.5 more as well. If you do want to go outside of Solanke, you find the money for Havertz maybe. But Toney, I mean, if he's in that Brentford team, he's a very good option.
Yeah, and 7.5 isn't bad either, is it really? I think because if you're picking Haaland, everyone has Isak, right? So you're then going to struggle to fit in Solanke. Well, I suppose you can do Solanke, and I've seen quite a few drafts actually with that front three. So maybe you could do him instead of Solanke, but certainly in my structure, I'm struggling to get to 7.5 with Toney. And I think as well, probably Brentford's form last season is probably putting people off a little bit because they were suffering. I know Toney missed a lot of the season, and when he came back, they did look a little bit better. But Toney missed so much football. He was okay, I would say, at the end of last season. He had a bit of an impact, of course, with England off the bench. But if we're thinking of the Toney that arrived in the Premier League for 7.5 million, yeah, okay, we'd all be jumping on that, wouldn't we? But yeah, with the transfer rumour, with Brentford's form, with the way our team structures are working, he's just a difficult player, perhaps, to go with at the start. But that said, I think, Brentford's fixtures are good, like you said. Starts the season well, it'll be the one that people are jumping to if they're jumping off Solanke, if he's not ended up being first choice for Spurs or doesn't make a brilliant start for them. He is certainly a player that we might be overlooking, I think.
Yeah, we'll see Ian's team in a couple of minutes, guys. Stay tuned for that. Dave says Carvalho to Brentford is Brentford at 5 million. A lot of people have told me my YouTube video this morning replacing Bobb with Carvalho, and I get the interest. I would say about Thomas Frank and Brentford, players, new signings are often eased into that team. I think he will be very good, and I think he could be a very good FPL option in a few weeks or a month time. But don't expect him to be starting game week 1 or 2. I just think he'll be eased in. Before we see Ian's team, we've got to touch on other forwards. We've spoken Solanke, Toney, and mentioned Havertz there, but a lot of teams have gone with the Isaac Haaland double up and then an enabler. And enabler that they'll probably play as their 7th attacker every week in, say, João Pedro. How does the news of Brighton signing or potentially signing another striker? I know. I think they've hit the asking price on Rutner, haven't they, from Leeds? Who had Jorginho Rutner who had a really good season last time out at Leeds. Wasn't great in the Premier League when he arrived at Leeds in the January window, but I think was injured a lot. Does that put us off João Pedro, big man, a little bit?
Not a little bit, I think completely, because I mean, Brighton's they have so many attacking options at their disposal now that their expected minutes are all very murky. And you know, even when you look at some of their opening fixtures as well, they're playing Arsenal, Man United, and Everton away. The fixtures are all right, but like they don't necessarily scream that come get me as a Brighton attacker, especially when expected minutes are in doubt. I was sort of on the fence with Pedro anyway, and now that this sort of news has come in, I'm just completely sort of put me off him. Now, a lot of people who have had Pedro, they've sort of jumped to Solanke or are looking at an alternative in the price range, such as Muniz or Armstrong. I'm currently thinking about Armstrong. I'm still not sure which way I'm going to go. I could go Muniz as well, but it's not ideal. You know, this news sort of filtering in 48 hours before the deadline when I've been on João Pedro since the game launched. It's not ideal, but yeah, it's enough to put me off.
What about Calvert-Lewin at that price point? 6.
Dean's boy.
Yeah, as long as he stays fit, but I think that's a big if. That's the only concern that I have with him. I think I prefer the robustness and the longevity of someone like Muniz or Armstrong over him.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, Calvert-Lewin actually ended up getting more minutes in the Premier League last season than Rasmus Højlund, which someone told me the other day, which I was absolutely flabbergasted at. He played more than you realised, I think, last year, quietly, because basically he didn't score very many, did he? He only got 8 in the end. But, you know, if he is fit, he's absolutely guaranteed first choice centre forward for Everton, who, you know, would have been comfortably mid-table if it wasn't for the points deduction last year. Goals were an issue, obviously. And if you've got a centre forward then who's injury prone in a team that doesn't score many goals, maybe I should be second guessing me talking up Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Obviously, Chris Wood as well. There's some interest, it sounds like, with Forest for centre forwards. But if Ruta comes in at Brighton, that definitely does place a bit more of a question mark over João Pedro. And I think, obviously, the Bournemouth situation is one to keep an eye on as well. Evan Nielsen sounds like an option for them. So, you know, he could be another one who comes in at that sort of price point, depending on what FPL decides. So another one to keep an eye on. Unfortunately, he might not make the game week 1 deadline, which would be very annoying, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure he will, but that'll be interesting because Bournemouth produce chances for everyone's saying, Solanke at Spurs is great because they produce so many chances for their number 9. Well, Bournemouth do a good job of that as well. And he's probably going to come in a lot cheaper than 7.5 Solanke. And
there's a bit more certainty as well. I mean, I'll talk about it when we look at the draft in a moment, but you are looking for some certainty, aren't you? You're looking for sides who have been stable from last season. Yeah. And, you know, Bournemouth, there is a significant change with Solanke going, but everything around him, the manager's the same. You'd think the style would be the same. You feel like they're gonna be able to build on what they did last year. So, one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and that's why it's the certainty we get from, say, a Palace defender or a goalkeeper. Everton defence, same again. Like we spoke about Calvert-Lewin there. Defense. Arsenal for sure. Guys, thank you for all taking part in the comments in the chat. We've loved reading them. Do keep getting the comments in. Hit those buttons, like and subscribe. I think we should see Ian's team. I'm very keen to see it. And we'll talk about ours in comparison to it as well. So, Ian, how are you shaping up? And how locked do you feel? Like, do you think this will go right to the wire? You settled on 90%?
I'm not locked yet, but I'm about 90%. So just to spell it out, I had Oscar Bobb and brought in Rodgers, like I said before. That was the change yesterday. Before that, I was fairly set. I just worry whether I'm going too strong with my first 11. I look at that bench, especially if there's a question mark over Barco's minutes in the first few weeks of the season. And, I've not probably got a sub there. I've got Smith Rowe, who's just starting at Fulham, who hasn't played every week for a long time. I've got Rodgers, like I said, explained before, even Diogo Jota. So all of a sudden, actually, sitting down and looking at it, I think probably I need to get some money, free up some money somewhere. After being so positive about Bruno, it could be Bruno who gets downgraded and spread the funds a little bit. Because I just worry that I'm maybe leaving myself a bit susceptible to end up with only 10 players starting even in game week 1. So.
Yeah, what's your hot take there, big man? Is it too light on the bench? 2 4.0s, and then obviously a fairly dead spot in Jefferson.
At first glance, when I looked at the bench, I assumed this would be a Haaland and Salah team because the bench was very threadbare, and most teams that have a threadbare bench are picking Haaland and Salah. But I sort of like the way you've sort of put your money in the 11. It's a very, very strong 11. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I agree with you. I think some money needs to be freed up because let's say if there's any injury, if anyone gets dropped or if anything of the sort happens, then you might be forced into making too many transfers. And as mentioned earlier, I prefer to be in a position where I can save transfers, and having a more sustainable bench would allow you to be in a much better position, I think. From this lot, I would probably downgrade Son and upgrade some of the rest of the picks in the team.
I knew you were going to say Son. Don't do Sonny, and I've got Son. I was thinking, where can you do it? And yeah, Son's a legit option. Of course it is, because it's the midfield. You go, Rodgers should probably be an 8th midfielder, Smith Rowe a 7th. And at the moment, that's 6 and 7 in terms of attacker.
My thing with Son, and I understand why you've gone for him, obviously being a 10 million option, it can be Saka, even before the deadline, to be fair. But he could be Saka at a later date. He also gives me a bridge to Salah if I end up making a huge error in not having Salah in my team. He gives me the opportunity to get there a lot easier than having a cheaper asset in that slot. I want a proper premium slot in that midfield for that reason.
So one of your defenders has to go down to a 4.5.
I completely missed. I thought you had Saka as well. So with Son, keep Son because he's the only premium mid. I completely get your argument. I'm sorry I missed it earlier. No. In which case, I think I would downgrade one of the defenders, the 3 starting defenders. I would downgrade one of them and spend that money on the bench, or maybe even to upgrade Rodgers or the 8th attacker.
Who would you downgrade then? Who'd be number 1 on the chopping block?
You'll save 1.5.
I mean, reluctantly, it would be Guardiola. Reluctantly.
Okay.
I think I prefer Trent for his explosiveness and the opening fixtures. It's between Gabriel and Guardiola, and I think Gabriel is probably better for his goal threat, and because Arsenal, they are a better defense, and because I think Gabriel is probably more safer for starts than Guardiola once the Champions League kicks in. So I think I would probably go with Gabriel. I was going to suggest Konza, the Liverpool Konza, for Guardiola, but then I realized that if you want Salah in, let's say, game week 4 or 5, then you may not have a route to him. So that's an issue for people who are picking Trent and Jota, right?
That's an issue for me too. I've got that trio. Yeah. And I'm happy with it, but if I get Salah, I'm going to need to sell Kwanzaa as well. And I guess I'm all right with that 2 transfer thing. But Trent, Kwanzaa, Jota, I think is a very good 3 and solid 3. If you're going down from Guardiola to a 4.5 defender, Kwanzaa does make sense.
Have I missed something then? I mean, I'm quite a big fan of Ibrahim Konate, to be fair. So are we absolutely certain that that's the first choice?
Yeah, I'll give you a few reasons, and then Big Man, I'll throw to you to add any, because I've looked into this a ton.
Good, because I haven't.
Yeah. So Klopp football was, end to end, a lot of 1v1 defending. Konate's great at that. Slot football, all about possession control. Kwanzaa the better footballer in terms of passing out the back. In a preseason friendly 2 preseason games ago, when Van Dijk wasn't around, Kwanzaa played right centre back, Konate left centre back, and they both are right centre back. So it was like, Konate, you fill in as the Van Dijk role.
I'm with you. Okay.
And then obviously the one friendly where he went fairly full strength against Sevilla, the second game was Las Palmas directly after that game. He played the one and only game pre-season when Van Dijk has had a partner. He's partnered Kwanzaa. Konate was in the B squad. So I'm pretty convinced.
Andy
Kwanzaa's
Robertson was in the B squad. So do you think
he was? But he's been
gonna
injured.
start?
He's been injured, and Gakpo and Darwin were in the B squad. But again, it was their first games back. Konate had been back a while and was still in the B squad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
I think you're good there. And that 1.5 massively helps. Guys, we'll do a poll. Pick one, Gabriel or Gvardiol. If you can only have one, because that's a tough one. Really tough decision. I don't know where I vote. I think I'm probably with Bigman. Does Gvardiol's position in the Community Shield maybe think we're not going to get the same attacking returns if Rico Lewis is at right back and inverting? It means Gvardiol's often in a back three in possession.
Well, welcome back to Manchester City's team selections. Who knows? In that game, yes, Rico Lewis did affect Gvardiol's positioning. But would you be surprised if Rico Lewis wasn't right back against Chelsea?
No.
Yeah, exactly. We can't be certain about Guardiola's positioning at the start of the season. It's a guessing game. But having said that, he's still a good pick. I mean, I'm not putting anyone off picking him because City still are an elite defense, right? And Guardiola, even if he plays as a centre back or even if he doesn't attack as much as the left back, he's still a good pick.
Yeah, he is. Gabriel currently winning the poll at 68, 67, 33. So it's really close. Keep voting, guys. Thank you as well for watching. We know we've got loads of lurkers. If you want to add to the chat, feel free to. If you want to subscribe to the channel because you're new around here, please do. We do streams Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays usually. This week's a little bit different. Do hit that notification bell because the times always change as well. Ian, where should we go to here, big man?
One point. I forgot to add. I won't pick Matthews as the backup goalkeeper. I would pick some other 4 million defender. Sorry, keeper. Because I think, because you might get locked out of Palace at some point.
Yeah,
and they do have plenty of realistic options, right? As is there, Munoz, Mateta, all these guys. You might need them later at some point. I don't think it's worth risking the 4 million backup. Just pick someone else.
Yeah, fair enough. It's like old school FPL, isn't it? Picking the 4.5 and the 4 million backup. So I agree. Actually,
that's what I done with Brentford.
I did the same, and I'm probably going to change it. I might get to Bentley because Wolves. There's rumours that Jose Sarr could lose. They'll probably replace him if he goes, but you never know. Bentley could get some minutes. He did at the end of last season.
Do you know as well? How annoying would it be if you did change that and then your goalkeeper got injured in that game at 1 or 2? I feel like that's happened to me on Wildcard before now. And ended up with no goalkeeper pretty quick. But I'd take your point on Palace in particular, because if they do hit the ground running like they were last year, we are going to want to get in there. And there is strong defence on the end of last season's form and a strong attack. So, it's quite easy to see you ending up with 3. I suppose my other dilemma a little bit was Saka or Son. So I looked at maybe the first sort of 5 or 6 fixtures and I just felt like they were slightly stronger for Son than they were for Saka. But then certainly beyond that, it looked like Arsenal had the stronger fixtures. And with Saka, obviously, he has come back late, hasn't he, after playing with England during the tournament. I tried initially when I picked my first draft to try and avoid players who'd gone deep into the tournaments in the summer, with the Copa America and the Euros, just because at that point, Haaland and Salah were both in my side, who had both had 3 pre-seasons and had a lot of minutes and come back to it. I mean, if I'm honest, I wouldn't totally rule out trying to find a way to get Salah in for Son and downgrading Jota as well and just going for it, because those Liverpool fixtures are so good. And again, if Jota ended up on the bench in game week 2, I wouldn't be that surprised. And then you're missing out on that run that they've got. There's real uncertainty, like I was talking about before. A new manager, lots of options. So Jota's not normally the type of pick I would make in game week 1 in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely hear that. The Son-Saka debate's great for Big Man because he's on Saka and I'm on Son, and we're probably both fixed on that. So go on, Big Man.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Gianni's been a huge advocate of Son, which is fine because the first 2 fixtures. I've been a huge advocate of Saka because of the opening fixture and because he's captainable in game week 3. I think he's going to be my game week 3 captain. That's one of the main reasons why I preferred Saka over Son, because even if I have Son, I don't think I'll captain him in the opening 2 fixtures, but it's different with Saka. I was going to suggest that with this very team, you could downgrade Guardiola to 4.5, then perhaps upgrade one of the 4 million defenders to another 4.5, you can look at rotations. So, for example, Spurs, Villa rotate well, Everton, Fulham, they rotate well, and that would solve your defensive headache. And then that would also allow you, that would give you 1 million extra, which I would use to upgrade Jebison to Armstrong. I don't think Jebison is going to be a long-term pick. And with this team, Smith Rowe is fine, but again, he doesn't have the best of injury record. Similarly, Rodgers could be an X-Men's pick. That 5.5 million forward would be very useful in the structure, because then you'll be more confident having a team that you can put up every week.
Yeah, I agree. And again, coming back to it, I do think I've gone far too strong in my first 11, especially considering there is the doubt over Smith Rowe and Rodgers, and to an extent Diogo Jota. So I'm glad I did this stream.
The fifth defender pick as well. We won't spend long on it, but the Harwood-Bellis shout is the most popular 4 million defender going outside of Barco. But it is worth looking, depending on your other defenders, and this is for everyone watching. Does Fass work better because Leicester have better fixtures when your other defenders have bad fixtures? Or is Harwood-Bellis the best option? Or do you look at a 4.0 option at Ipswich, of which there's a few, including Ben Johnson, who will play a lot at right wing back? So I've just swapped out Harwood-Bellis for Johnson just because it complements my other guys slightly better. I don't think there's much between these guys in terms of points. It's just about how do they complement your others. Ian, I want to ask you about Man City. Doku 6.5. Should, in theory, start the season. We never know with Doku. And unlike Oscar Bobb, he doesn't have an end product, which is why Bobb was so highly rated by me and in my team. But Doku does seem to be always this close to a haul. And he can turn it on, and you never know. The stars might align for him. Do we like him as an option?
Yeah, he's in the same sort of bracket as Bernardo Silva, isn't he, really? Where on their day, they could be fantastic FPL options, and double-digit hauls are well within the reach. I think Bernardo's minutes are probably more secure than Doku actually as well. So if you were looking at that type of decision, I would edge towards Bernardo. I'm not totally certain with Doku just because of the stuff that you've already talked about. The question mark that there was over his end product last season. At times, he got himself into some fantastic positions and couldn't quite make that final pass or provide that finish. He was in and out of the team as well. So yeah, I just, that's why I wanted Oscar Bobb. I wanted a second Manchester City attacker. I think they'll be the strongest attack again. I've not seen anything to suggest that they won't be. Alvarez weakens them certainly, but they coped last season for large periods without De Bruyne being an option for them. And, he didn't look quite at his best towards the end of last season, but he's still there. City still have faith in him. He'll still be first choice. So, yeah, it's what role ends up that Phil Foden ends up as well, isn't it? For me, there's a bit of a question mark over that. He seemed to be establishing himself last season more and more as a central option. He could be an option at false 9, like I was saying earlier on, if there's no Haaland, but he can play right and left too. So it's just another year where it's going to be really, really tough to work out Manchester City week to week and make solid predictions about who's going to play and who's going to play where. And I just think with Doku, there's just too much uncertainty for me for him to be an option.
Yeah, and if we do want double City, then the ideal double up, of course, is Haaland and Foden. It's just a lot of money. Son can become Foden for both of us or for Saka owners very easily whenever we feel relevant. Let's just talk about Haaland and captaincy, because you've got the armband there on Haaland.
Yeah.
Me and Bakar are probably both going. I'm definitely going Isak, and Bakar, I think you're quite hot on Isak too. So Bakar, to you first, your take on captaincy this week, and then Ian will speak more about Haaland and captaincy in general.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Isak. I was having a look at the bookmakers odds, and Isak is actually comfortably the highest player to score this week. I think for people without Salah, he's the standout choice. If I had Salah, I think I would probably be captaining Salah, simply because the fixture. And if you're not captaining Mo Salah against Ipswich, then what's even the point of owning him is what I'd ask, right? So in that case, you go Salah. If you don't have Salah, then I think Isak is the best option. Prolific home record on penalties, no doubts over X minutes. Great fixture as well. Yeah, I think Newcastle will do well against Southampton. Isak, I expect a double-digit haul, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Ian, you tempted to make that switch? You 50-50 on it or sold on
Yeah.
Haaland?
Yeah, probably 51-49 if you had to put a number on it. It was Isak originally. Chelsea have not had a great pre-season, have they? And again, a lot of uncertainty with them, with the new manager, lots of changes once again with personnel. I think City win that game at Stamford Bridge, and I think if City win the game, Haaland's amongst the goals. That said, I think Newcastle beat Southampton, and when Newcastle do well at home, Isak tends to be among the points as well. So I wouldn't be surprised either way with those two, really. But on paper, clearly the Southampton fixture for Isak is better. I wouldn't make a strong argument that Haaland's wrong and Isak's right, or vice versa. I think you pick who you've got the most feel for and go for it. Really, I was even tempted by Son at Leicester if he stays in my team. To be honest, I was looking at something on the Athletic actually, and Chelsea and Leicester's fans, only just behind Manchester United, have the least optimism for how this season's going to go, which I thought was quite a revealing statistic. And these are obviously engaged managers as well, engaged fans, you would think as well, being Athletic subscribers who've been watching their teams in pre-season and watching the dynamic around the teams as well. So I'm not going to base all my decisions on that. I just thought it was an interesting insight. Leicester are not a team that I've seen anything of in pre-season. I've read bits, I've looked at bits. I'm actually there on Monday.
For me too.
Game against Spurs, so I'll be doing my homework ahead of that. So maybe I should bring it forward a little bit and see if it benefits my FPL team as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm as a Chelsea fan, like he scored a hat-trick against us in pre-season. He scored a brace against us in this fixture last year. Haaland's obviously a great option as always. Maybe it's that home advantage for Isak that swung it for me. I ideally like going with the home player. Interesting debate. I think the masses will still be looking at Haaland, but so many engaged managers we know are going Isak. Look at that ownership, by the way, 57% Isak, 47% Haaland. He has crept up. Haaland this time 10 days ago was around 35% owned. And now he's going to enter around 50. And of course, Salah is being sold en masse because he's not had the best preseason in terms of goals, but he still had a perfectly fine pre-season, Mo Salah. Guys, we've got time for some questions. Do hit those buttons, like and subscribe. Also, if you're watching on Catch Up, and so many of you do watch on Catch Up, so hello to everyone that is watching slightly later on Thursday afternoon or even on Friday morning. If you drop a comment, we will guarantee answer your question. If you want to know about your team or any questions, then drop a comment. So not in the chat at the moment, but the actual comments in the videos to this video. Drop a comment and we will reply in the next, I'm sure, within an hour of that comment. Thank you, guys. Get your questions in as well. We've got 5 minutes for a bit of a Q&A. Bakar, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you reckon you'll be making moves 10 minutes before the deadline, or do you reckon you'll lock in Friday morning?
Yeah, I have 0.5 million in my current draft, so that basically answers the whole question. Because
you can't.
I don't think I'll be able to. Yeah. Basically, that's basically a giveaway that I will make. A few changes to my team before the deadline. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. There's no way I'm gonna have 0.5 million in the bank. I just won't be able to. It's basically like an OCD, right? I just can't deal with it.
I just admire anyone's willpower to be able to leave money in the bank
exactly.
when it comes to game week 1 like this. Yeah, definitely.
Dude, I find it hard to do it on a free hit or on a wild card later in the season, let alone in a game week 1 team, right?
Yeah. Well, do you know, was it last season we were playing our free hits and there was like 20 odd million left in the bank?
Yeah.
I did not.
It's when there was like 5 fixtures and we only
trying to look for ways to make it more expensive, even though it's like a worse team, just to make yourself feel better. There is an argument to be made about coping with the price changes, I suppose. And again, this season, with the changes that have been made, we've been able to make 5 transfers. Does that mean maybe that the price changes won't be as volatile at the start as they've been in previous years? So, it's a bit of an insurance policy, I guess, keeping that 0.5, but don't be boring. Just get it all in you. I've just got it all in my first 11 pretty much. So you can see my attitude towards it.
You've got it all in your first 8.
Yeah, there is that.
Philip says, play 1 in game week 1. João Pedro, Menezes and Kunku. Do you know, I'd say, I think João Pedro against Everton, he scored a really good goal in that last friendly for Brighton. I think he starts this one. Maybe just him. Luke, we'll alternate questions. So Ian, you're up next with Luke's question, and Big Man, you'll be after that, and then back to me.
So is Quansah, Hall, Jota and João Pedro too much risk? So I'm presuming, Luke, you've picked all of those players. You're in my boat, basically, aren't you? There's a lot of question marks there. Depends on who else is backing them up. If you're relying on those players on your bench, I guess. If you've got like those players and a bench like me, then definitely, that's too much risk.
One for you, Bakar.
Yeah. Mazen is asking if you had to choose between Saka, Solanke, and Son Havertz, which will it be? I revert this back to you, Johnny. I mean, you know the answer to this. What will be my answer? It's very easy. It's Saka, Solanke.
Yeah, and I'd be Son Havertz. Yeah. Luca, downgrade Gvardiol to 4.5. That's something Ian might do, and upgrade João Pedro to a Solanke. Ooh.
I like that.
Do you? I don't know how I feel about that.
It depends. No, it depends on the structure of the team. So if someone has a structure similar to Ian's team,
yeah,
exactly, then it makes sense. But if someone has a structure similar to my team, for example, then I don't like downgrading a premium defender. What I'm trying to say is that I like the team structures with 2 premium defenders at least. So 2 of basically Gabriel, Guardiola, Porro, Trent. I would like to have at least 2 of them so that I can sort of jump back and forth whenever needed.
Yeah.
Is this mine?
Yeah, I think so. So 2 of us are on Hendo, aren't we?
Yeah, Adamas, Flecken or Henderson. You're gonna split us here. I think Palace is a stronger defence than Brentford, so I'd go Henderson. But I know someone to my side who may disagree.
Sally's question for you, big man. Rodgers or João Pedro on the bench?
I think João Pedro will start. I think João Pedro will start in game week 1. Yeah, I think I'd probably start Rodgers, but I mean, I would rather flip a coin, to be very honest. I don't think there's much between this. Anyone have a strong case to make for either? I'm not sure.
I'd go João Pedro because he's on pens, but yeah. Kamada to cover Eze. It's always tough when we talk about covering a player. It's like you can't cover Mo Salah with Jota. You just might get some more Liverpool points if Salah scores, but you can't cover the best players from the best teams. They're the best player from that team for a reason. But I don't mind that because I think Muniz is a good big upgrade.
A very similar sort of narrative that a lot of managers have is they think that someone like, let's say, Konza from Liverpool, now that he's emerged, that he can cover Trent. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
Right? Trent is in another league. He's not covering Trent, right? Similarly, I don't think Kamada can cover Eze if he stays at Palace.
Yeah. He'll get some goals and assists and be a good asset, but he's not going to be on all the set pieces, depends, and get as many points as Eze. One for you on Southampton's new signing, who clearly only likes playing in red and white.
Who's this for?
Yeah.
For you, I think, Ian. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I owned him on was it a free hit last year?
You did.
I had him when he had a double game week and he scored away at Old Trafford. And I had him when he was at Sheffield United.
5.5 million.
Yay or nay in what context? I mean, yay that he could have a similar impact to last season. Nay, I wouldn't have him instead of
Smith Rowe. Yeah.
No, I don't think I would. Yeah,
no, Smith Rowe for me is the best 5.5. And then Minte at Brighton, I think, is slightly better. Best midfielder at West Ham. Is it Bowen for 7.5 or Kudus for 6.5, Bakar?
I think I'd go with Minte. I think both will score similarly this season. And just because of the price saving, I think Minte is probably better.
Barco, a risk? I don't think he's that risky. He's risky if he's your third defender, maybe not your fourth. Thank you guys for your questions. I think we had a super chat. Is Ben White a good choice or Nkunku feels scammy, says Albin. I don't know how you'd compare Ben White and Nkunku. All I'd say is Ben White is a good option, but he's 0.5 more than Gabriel and Saliba. And therefore, I'd probably save the 0.5 and pick the Arsenal defender that may get fewer assists, but will get more goals. And Nkunku
Ben White
is a
more
good pick.
Expensive, is he?
Yeah, he's 0.5 more.
Right.
Which I feel like I know he outperformed him last year, but I think Ben White should be the same as Saliba and Gabriel. I don't think he should be 0.5 more.
Well, it's also having Jurriën Timber available eventually. What impact that has on Arsenal. Obviously, Calafiore is coming as well, which you'd expect to start eventually, but does he start at left back? The Arsenal defence actually, that's why I went Saliba in the end, because to me, he feels the most certain out of all of them to play the most minutes. But I wouldn't make a strong argument against Gabriel. Clearly, he was a brilliant asset last year. They both scored in the final pre-season friendly just to make it that slightly bit more difficult as well for us.
Yeah. Dan, first option for me there, just because Watkins, we're not sure if he's ready game week 1 to start. Guys, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for everyone in the chat and for those watching on Catch Up. Ian, tell us where we can find you and FPL and non-FPL stuff.
Yeah, well, FPL stuff, I've got nothing set like last season at the moment. So I'll be with you, obviously, from time to time, Gianni. Hopefully you have a good start to the season. If you don't, it would provide more ammunition for me to come back more regularly. But yeah, I will be back with you at some point. I'll be on the FPL pod at some point as well. There's nothing arranged at the moment, but obviously my usual stuff is working for the Premier League, pitchside reporting, doing interviews. I'm at Eric Ten Hag's press conference, for example, this afternoon. And yeah, I'll be. Sorry, my phone's just started playing. And yeah, I'm also on the Athletic Manchester United podcast, Talk of the Devils, as well. So that's the usual stuff really for me.
When does Talk of the Devils drop? Is it? Do you do it once a week or more?
Twice a week, yeah. Mondays and Thursdays usually. It's been slightly different this week. We did do Monday. We have done today, but we've also got one tomorrow night after the game against Fulham. And Manchester United consistently provide fertile ground for good reasons and not so good reasons to hold a 2-time a week discussion. Absolutely ridiculous, really, but good fun.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it is. Big man, your plans for the next 24 hours? You've got a thread dropping tomorrow, I expect.
Tonight, actually.
Tonight.
I'm just going to write it as soon as we end this show. I'm going to write the thread, release it in a couple of hours. And then, yeah, I'm going to spend the rest of the night playing around with my draft and let's see where I end up.
Swapping Dean Henderson for Flecken, I imagine.
Guys, thank you so much for joining. For now, we're going to say goodbye. Chasing Green Arrows will be back tomorrow with a deadline stream. I don't know who Dean's joined by. I'm sure it'll be at 5:30 to 6:30, which will be the hour before the deadline. So join Chasing Green Arrows for that deadline stream. If you're just tuning in, go back and watch the last hour. But for now, we will say our goodbyes. He's been Big Man. He's been Ian. I've been Gianni. You lot have all been the amazing chasers. Thank you as always for your support. And we'll see you tomorrow for another video.